Fighter jets, missiles, and more. China has sent them all toward Taiwan in recent days in response to Nancy Pelosi's visit to the island. The People's Liberation Army had promised targeted military operations on multiple sides of Taiwan, and it delivered. Earlier today, Taiwan's defense ministry said some of China's activities was a simulated attack against the island. To understand more, let me bring in Oriana Schuyler Mastro. She is a fellow at Stanford's Freeman Spogli Institute and a scholar at AEI. She's also an officer in the Air Force Reserve, but she's speaking today in her civilian capacity. Welcome, Oriana. First, give us a sense, how would you characterize these live fire exercises? How should we think of them?
Well, of course, these live fire exercises are a show of force. China telling us they're unhappy with Speaker Pelosi's visit. But much more importantly, they're a combat rehearsal. The Chinese military hasn't fought a war since 1979. Xi Jinping has been very clear that they need to do more realistic exercises if they're going to prepare to take Taiwan by force. So to me, what's really significant is the unprecedented scale. It's not only the live fire tests, the missile tests, but we also had 100 aircraft operating, 10 destroyers and support vessels, allegedly also nuclear submarines, aircraft carriers, all of these different forces operating together in close proximity towards Taiwan is very sophisticated and complicated and is meant to help them get to the point where they're confident that they could do an operation successfully against the island.
And from what you can tell, does it appear to have been as effective as Beijing might have hoped?
As an outside observer, it looks like everything went according to plan. For example, the missile tests, the missiles landed where Beijing had planned for them to land. In terms of the aircraft, they had 100 different aircraft, which was fighters, bombers, early warning, air refueling, tankers, and they seem to have successfully conducted the operations that they wanted to, which ranged everything from joint reconnaissance to air superiority operations, refueling, and ground assault. So from the outside, it looks like they successfully conducted the exercises that they planned to. Though, of course, war inserts some uncertainty. They were uncontested in these exercises. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they'd be able to do the exact same thing if war actually occurred.
Would you compare these exercises for us to the last time China had a big military response, which was the Taiwan Straits crisis of 1996? How, since then, China has become much richer and has spent a lot on its military.
Right. We have seen military spending go up by over 740% in the meantime, and the result has been really significant. So in 1995, 1996, China conducted 4 rounds of live fire tests of missile tests. Every time they did it, they never fired more than 6 missiles, and they mainly went to the north and south of Taiwan, never crossing over, right, like they did this time. Furthermore, that was the extent of the exercise. That was the end of it. The United States had sent in carrier strike groups in the vicinity of Taiwan to warn China off, and that seemed to work. We look at that as a lesson that the United States successfully deterred China. But what China learned was they never wanted that to happen again. And so in the meantime, they have built up not only one of the most sophisticated and advanced militaries, but also one that can attack and keep out the United States. So now not only did you have these missile tests, but you had the air operations I referred to, as well as naval operations that were in the vicinity of Taiwan, air bases, naval bases, and ports. And so for all these different components to be operating together is truly impressive. And my view is we'll probably see additional rounds of military exercises in the future. There's already been an announcement that the Chinese plan on conducting one in the Yellow Sea and the Bohai Sea. So this one is definitely of an unprecedented scale and complexity, and one that's really designed to show that China can take Taiwan whenever it feels ready to do so.
How dangerous do you think these are? The Chinese did encroach on what's called the EEZ, which is sort of, an economic zone. It's not really international waters, but it's an area, a sensitive area, let's say. Is there a danger that it could trigger a response from Taiwan, from Japan, from the United States?
So I think these exercises do increase the likelihood of war, but not the traditional path. So I think a lot of commentators are concerned that because of heightened military activities, you might see some sort of accident or incident that could spiral accidentally to war. The bottom line is, when China makes a move on Taiwan, if they're going to do it successfully, there has to be an element of surprise. It has to be quick and it has to be fast. So they don't want to do it right now when the United States has really increased its focus and its operations in the region. However, the more they get to do this level of exercise, the more confident they are going to become in their capabilities. And in my assessment, the only thing keeping them from making a move against Taiwan is right now they're not 100% sure that that operation would go well. So the more they do these exercises, the more confident they are, the more likely we are going to see Beijing initiate force against the island.
Oriana, always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for your insights.